let's get started. As people file in, we'll start getting them to file in, but hopefully they can start hearing the sound of my voice and letting them know that the workshop is about to start and we can get going. So for those of you that are here, my name is Sam Brace. I'm this guy right here. I'm the Director of Customer Education here at Cloudinary, and I am joined with my friend Kristi, who is the Digital Asset Manager at SECLOCK. Kristi.
Hi, so SECLOCK is a leading distributor of door hardware. So we do locks and lock-related things. No, I don't know anything about locks still, but I'm learning, so don't ask me any of those questions.
But as we're pointing out through this title, we're focusing on a B2B e-commerce model. So as Kristi just articulated, with focusing on locks, there's a very specific type of customer that would be typically purchasing locks. This would be people that would be building doors, people that are maybe involved with home development, home building. There's lots of different audiences, but it's typically going to be some form of the hardware construction type of space.
Yep, exactly.
So this isn't your typical B2C situation, and very different than what Andrew and Sam at Custom Ink just articulated, because they're talking to anybody that wants a printed t-shirt, anybody that wants their logo on something. Kristi and her team has a very niche audience. So we're going to be talking about, through this presentation, ways that Kristi and the team at SECLOCK are being able to grab many different types of imagery, videography, and time, and ways to be able to handle that organization within their Cloudinary DAM. So as we're pointing out, e-commerce is a big driver for that. All of that purchasing will be taking place. But it's also from the B2B perspective, not the B2C, as we just have heard. So, Kristi, one of the reasons that we have you here, of course, is because, yes, you are using Cloudinary DAM, and thank you for that.
Yes.
But also, you have used many DAMs.
I have, yes.
Tell us a little bit about that history.
So I started off at a small company called SmartPack, and I chose and implemented a DAM there. So that was Canto Cumulus, which was an on-prem solution, and I wouldn't wish that upon anyone. They wouldn't let me do cloud-based. And then I went to Bose, where they used the AEM DAM. I also would not recommend that. So I decided to go away from that. So we implemented Binder there. And then I started at SECLOCK, and they were using Media Valet. And they were like, we hate this. No offense to anyone who uses Media Valet, but please find and implement another DAM. So then we did some discovery and decided on Cloudinary.
And that's an amazing segue, Kristi, because if we talk about our first
Exactly.
topic, we're going to be talking about why
Why?
Cloudinary. And it's not to sell you on the system. Frankly, most of your customers, so at this point, you probably know why you're using the system. But to help you understand some of the key things that we're going to be talking about in the ways that SECLOCK has implemented the DAM solution, it's important to understand their reasonings for our platform. Because as we know, and as Kristi just articulated, there are many vendors in the digital asset management space. And some of them have specific niches, some of them have definite pros, some of them have certain things that could be considered cons, depending on what your use cases and outputs need to be. So let's dive into that first topic. What does this mean, single source of truth? Andrew actually mentioned this in the Custom Ink presentation, where they were talking about single source of truth. It's a hot topic. It gets said a lot in DAM conversations. But what does that mean to you, Kristi?
So it means I literally just upload one image to one place, and I don't have to do it anywhere else. And I think it's every digital librarian's dream to have this. And this is the first time that I'm able to do it. So every other place I've been, it's like, well, for the website, it needs to be in here, or we need to put something separate in AWS to power that. And this is the first time that I'm able to actually put an image into Cloudinary, and it's a DAM and it's delivery.
And as you can see, when we take a look at these screenshots here, what this is articulating is that we have ways to organize our files. We have ways to share them, which is a very common digital asset management practice. You can allow for internal users to come in, organize files. They have usernames, they have passwords, they have permissions. But back to this point, we can make sure that all of these files are organized, but also being able to be delivered, because once you put anything into your Cloudinary DAM system, it is immediately, instantaneously deliverable. So this is a key aspect of why Kristi and the team at SECLOCK decided to use our system. Once again, It's not for everybody, but it certainly was for you, which is great.
Yes.
So what does it mean to be developer friendly?
So our developers were over the moon when I talked about Cloudinary. A couple of them had used it before, but they were really excited at not having to have 20 lines of code, and instead they can have one. Then also the API endpoints, we can connect it to anything. We're a really big API company. We actually have our own API, so our customers can connect to our website for product information. So we're really tech friendly.
And I think one thing that I want to point out here is that this is the only code we will show in the no code track, my friends.
That's not our cat picture either.
Yes, I mean, there's no locks involved.
We don't sell cats.
But what this is showing is that through a simple API call, it is easy to then get any of this content into the DAM, which is then instantaneously organizable. Is that a term, organizable? I'm going to say yes. Yeah. And that way then librarians like Kristi can easily go through, start adding metadata, tags, starting bringing into certain folder structures. So it is showing the parity between what happens with the development teams and then what ends up happening with the UI output available in the DAM. So this is a key thing that, once again, was a driver for SECLOCK.
Yeah.
The last point, and the last salesy thing I'm going to say, is about downtime. One thing to remember is that there are a lot of promises that are based out there in the world when it comes to, is your system up, is it running? And we all want things to be up and running. When I want to turn it on, it should turn on. What have you experienced with other DAM vendors?
So the downtime for a couple of other vendors is pretty significant. Not the whole system, but certain parts of it. So if the system itself is up, but you can't upload or people can't download, that still counts. And problems not getting resolved quickly or not even being recorded at all. We spent a lot of time back and forth trying to get things working when they should have been working from the start.
And I think that's something to keep in mind, that a DAM system is meant to be a scalable system in the sense that you are not to be the only person that is administrating the DAM and the hundreds of thousands of assets that are in it. You are supposed to have teams. And if your teams are relying on your system being up, if it's down, you know who gets blamed? Kristi.
Yes.
Administrators, librarians. And do you want her to be the brunt of all of that anger? No. So we decide to use a system that works, yes, which is what we're indicating here. Mm-hmm. So what this is more saying is not to like pat myself on the back, but more to say, when you are doing your research on any system, you should be looking at their status dot page. You should be seeing, are they up constantly or are they not? And make sure that if you are seeing indications that they are, still do some checks and balances to make sure that's true. So let's get into the nuts and bolts. Kristi, how are you getting your products into the Cloudinary DAM?
So I usually have to go to an assortment of media sites. It's not ideal, but we don't carry every product. So we're not having the vendors upload directly into our DAM because they would just upload everything and we don't carry everything. So I'll go select, so here's a couple of examples of the media sites that I have to go to, find the products, download those. Hopefully they have the product in the way that it's supposed to be. I might need to change it a bit. If we do shoot some stuff, not a lot. We basically build it. So if they have the right cylinder or whatever with the lever, then I can put it together myself. But it's a culmination of going to all of these media sites and downloading it in the format we need. And it's sort of iffy on if they have the right format. Sometimes yes, sometimes no.
And what I thought was interesting when me and Kristi were going through and building this presentation out, learning about SECLOCK and what they're doing, I said to her, well, why don't you just have them upload it to you? Like, make it easy. We have all these upload widgets. We have all these mechanisms. And you had a really good point that you don't sell everything that they make. So you could be creating clutter.
Right. And their naming would be wild because their naming is always wild. And they wouldn't put any metadata in. And it would literally be a dump of everything. So we already have over 2 million SKUs. It's like, frankly, overwhelming sometimes to think about. But if they just gave us everything that they had, then it would be even more overwhelming for me.
And that's why this manual checks and balances makes a lot of sense.
Right.
Because that way we can go to the site, we can find exactly what we need, we can pull it down exactly the way we want it to be pulled, rather than get this fire hose situation where Kristi's drinking from that, and that's not fun.
Yeah, I don't want to.
So let's make sure that it's a more sustainable process.
Yes.
Now, you are using Photoshop, and I want to make sure this is clear. We like Photoshop at Cloudinary a lot, and is pointing out that some of the processes are actually really good to be doing in this way to start getting comfortable with the assets you're finding.
Yeah, so we do, sometimes I'll get PNGs that have the background removed. We have a builder, so the customer can say, I want this cylinder, this lever. It builds it on our website, so we need the background to be transparent. Sometimes that's already done, sometimes it's not. If it's not, I clip it out real quick, nothing fancy. And then if I need to update the finish, I'll update the finish. So if it's supposed to come in bronze and they don't have it in bronze, I'll make it bronze, and then save it as a transparent PNG.
And this is an area where, yes, much of this can actually be automated through Cloudinary in time, but because we're still in the initial stages of implementation at SECLOCK, we're within a year period at this point.
Yeah, I've uploaded like 87,000 so far, and I still have probably 20 more to go, maybe in the initial upload. Just images. That's just images.
Just images.
Whole assortment of other. I told you it's overwhelming, like, right?
But what this will ultimately be is as this scales and as Kristi's team grows, because it naturally will, as we pointed out with the DAM situation, this is definitely where some of these things that we're pointing out, like verifying the size, modifying the finish, even removing the background, these are all things that then Cloudinary can do and help scale this operation. But being able to touch the process in its infancy is extremely important because we can know what the output's supposed to be based on what she's prescribed through Photoshop, and then build presets against it in year 2, 3, or 4.
Yes, that sounds great.
Yes, you got
Let's do that.
Done. Now, public IDs. Those of you that have gone through trainings at Cloudinary, you definitely know what a public ID is, but ultimately it's the file name, the asset name that lives within Cloudinary. As you pointed out, some of these are named differently in these vendor systems.
Yep. Yeah. So they'll name either by their SKU or actually by no naming convention whatsoever, as far as I can tell. So we'll want it named close to our SKU. So we'll have a single image that can represent even 1,000 plus SKUs, which makes it extra complicated. So it'll be like the manufacturer code plus the base SKU. So that's how we like to name them so that people can actually find them.
And as you can see with these screenshots that we have here in the DAM, there's many different ways that you can define the public ID, but the main way to make sure that you're doing this on a manual basis is by using the advanced feature of the upload widget. We're defining the public ID directly from there. So whatever it was pulled down as from vendor X, vendor Y, vendor Z, Kristi and the team can make sure they're named exactly what they need them to be in this case. And if for some reason, because Kristi is magical, but if she forgets one step, she can always go and change it after the fact.
That would never happen.
It never happens. So, but it's important to start thinking about naming conventions of your files. It's not just about the tagging. It's not just about the structured metadata, and those are things we're going to talk a lot about. But making sure that you are comfortable with what they're named and knowing that you can always change it to be something that you prefer, or back to what we're saying might be part of your overall conventions within that company or organization you work for.
Yep.
Now, tags. Tags can be used in a multitude of ways. And our developers, our non-developers can benefit from them. How is SECLOCK using tags?
So our tags might look a little redundant. I love Cloudinary. The search so far is it's not always great. So that's the reason for the redundancy. I know there's a new search that is going to come about, but for now, I think it's really important to just kind of put in what I know my users will search for. So are they going to just look for PEMCO photography? Do they want to look for product photography? Making sure that's all in there so that when the users go to find it, they actually come up with results.
And that was a big thing that Andrew and the Custom Ink team was talking about, is that, remember at the very end, for those of you that were in that presentation, they were actively talking about, we need to think about how the user is going to search for this, and then developing tagging and metadata structures to help them with those types of searches. Remember, Andrew even said that, where he said, tell me how you got to this so I can figure out how I can make that better for this next user. So even though, yes, there might be improvements coming in search, sure, But the fact that you're using tags in a way that's manipulating the search to how it should be used by your users based on those actions by their preferences, this is absolutely correct. Yeah. So if I type in manufacturer photography, I get back the results I need to get. And that has nothing to do with naming conventions either, because I can call this PM bop, 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 and I still get manufacturer photography.
Right.
So one other key thing that I do want to point out with this is that tags, of course, you're seeing this can be manually added. So you can always add your own tags upon upload. You can also always attach these to what we call upload presets. So if you're saying that every time that an asset is uploaded, you want to make sure that these 4 tags are always applied, that can always be done. So whether it's something that you decide to manually do on a one-off basis, or you're saying, I want this almost as a default, all of that is possible with the Cloudinary DAM. Let's get into metadata.
My favorite.
It's kind of my favorite too,
my favorite topic.
And I gotta tell you, I used to be a tags guy. I think I'm becoming a metadata guy in time.
Oh, it's so much better.
I know, there's a lot of things you can definitely do with it.
Yes.
So we're gonna do a little bit of a live demo as we go through this. So if you're used to me standing here, I will be standing there in just a little bit. But with structured metadata, what you can see that we're doing in this case is we're adding a little bit of context to what this is. Because with a tag can mean anything to anybody. I could write purple, and it could be about the color of the shirt, it could be the color of the pants, it could be the background, it could be how I feel. It's about what it is. Now, structured metadata now adds context to this. So if I type in cylindrical, it's not talking about what I feel, it's talking about the product subcategory. And we have details about the series, so I can very clearly know, okay, if I'm looking for a certain line, a certain product type, a certain manufacturer. And I hope you're starting to think about your business use cases that I'm showing this use case from SECLOCK. How does this apply to your brands, your products, those categories of brands? How are we going to be able to make it easy for people to find that content? And this way, I can make sure it's done with consistency. So I've said a lot. What do you think, Kristi?
So we have a combination of drop-downs and free text, just based on, we have a lot of information that is going to come over from our PIM. The integration is built, but the actual system isn't done yet. So based on that, we have kind of a mix. But it's really important, I think, to train people to search this way and not just go type into a free text field all of the time, because I think the results this way are going to be a lot more accurate. A lot of people do just want to go type in the search bar, and that is fine, but it just isn't going to give you the same results as if you use the structured metadata.
Absolutely. And some of the benefits that you get from this that you'll start to see when we get into the different fields here is, notice with the manufacturer, I'm pulling from a set manufacturer that Kristi and the team has defined.
Right.
So that has autocomplete functionality to it. So if I just start typing in Corbin, I'm going to get the actual manufacturer. I don't have to make sure I spelled that correctly.
Yeah.
The same situation with some of these, you can notice that these are acting as and clauses. So those of you that are database people, that I'm saying it's manufacturer and product subcategory and series to get this very finite amount of results. Right. Whereas if I start trying to manipulate this in other ways, through tags, through folder structures, it's not going to keep paring it down as simply as what I'm going to be able to get through structured metadata.
Right. Yeah.
And how many assets do you have?
Right now, like 87 in the DAM. I have so many more to go. So many more to go.
And think about that. If structured metadata, we didn't establish this structure and get this going, then we just have essentially a very messy room. Right. And it's very hard to find things when they're not organized. And back to the other point we need to remember about this. Kristi is a one-man army, a one-man wolf pack. And what that also means is that as she grows her pack, they need to know how to find things. And if it's just all in Kristi's head, it's never going to work out well. This works out well in this way. So I like what SECLOCK has done here, particularly with metadata. Now, let's start breaking down some of these field types here, because you can see that the way that structured metadata is looking in here. And once again, we'll show you how to navigate all of this in just a minute. But we can see that we have one that's called asset type. And notice that what we're pulling from here is a certain set of values that have been defined. Then we have the same situation happening here for subtypes. Notice that we also have certain ones that are more text-based. So talk to me about the reasonings for some of these choices that were made.
So the drop downs, I prefer drop downs. I hit some limitations in the series from Cloudinary. I think there's like some limitation for how many you can have. We have a lot of series, so we hit that. But also the information that's coming from the PIM, that's going to get automatically filled in here, here, and here. So it's going to come right from that. So there's really no reason to make that a drop down because I'll never be entering that information in the DAM. It's only going to come from the PIM, and that's all controlled fields within the PIM.
Awesome. Let me switch thoughts with you, and then we'll talk about how this is all done, because it's good to do a little bit of show and tell, not just screenshots. So what we're taking a look at here is the SECLOCK DAM system. I know, ooh la la. And when we go over and take a look at this, you'll see that this is the metadata search that we just provided. So notice that we went to the search, we said, show me the manufacturer, show me everything in the subcat that they have for their products, and also the series. And notice that you can make all of these values work exactly as you want to. But what I think is key here is that if I dive in and take a look at any of these beautiful logs, that when we go over and take a look at these in the system, notice that all of this is the metadata. And as we point out, we're utilizing tags as well as metadata to help with how our users are searching for content. So all of these are different fields here. And notice that there are even some that are meant to be mandatory. Notice you can tell that by this little red asterisk right here. So what that indicates is that cannot be just popped out. I can't leave the field without making sure something is assigned for asset type. So this ensures that your team can continue to organize and also have it where it doesn't just rely on Kristi and the team doing this. If someone uploads it, they have to make sure that this field, if anything, is filled out correctly, which is key. Mandatory fields are key.
Yes, I agree.
So if we take a look back at this, let's go ahead and pop over to the settings section. And this is something that only DAM administrators would be able to do, what I'm demonstrating here. So as we know, Kristi, administrator. And when we go and take a look at the structured metadata, this is where all of those fields happen to be. And if there were any ever times where she would need to change the values, the order of those values, as you can see, as I pointed out, it is a mandatory field for the asset type. This is where all of that would be coming into place. So for a good functioning DAM system, I cannot say this enough. I say it in every training I do, establish your metadata structure. It will make your life easier. It makes Kristi's life easier. It makes my life easier that people like Kristi exist.
And allow it to evolve because it will not be static. I'm still changing things constantly, just based on new information that comes in. So it's never done.
And that's key because remember, as we said, we're in year 1 of implementation. In year 2, year 3, year 4, this should be growing, evolving.
Right.
And also you should have team members, we'll talk about this towards the end, that should help you to guide those decisions. So that way it doesn't have to just rely on Kristi's facts and opinions. It's the team's facts and opinions.
Yes.
Kristi, before we jump to collections, is there any other thoughts that I'm missing here about metadata? That's not a trick question.
So one reason I'm focusing more on metadata is because we're attempting to use Cloudinary folder lists. So I'm not a fan of folders. I like things to be based on metadata. So we have a couple folders because I know that's how permissions are based, but overall I would like everything in the one bucket and for people to use the search and the filters in order to find what they need. So I know that is not the way that everyone does it, but I think it's the way that it works for me. It may look like a big giant bucket of a mess, but once you get into saying like, when you go to like a website to buy something, you click and you see everything and then you filter down to what you want. It's really the same thing.
And it's also a key thing to remember is many times when we talk about best practices, you're never going to hear me say, use folders. But what we do is we try to show the reasonings for this. And Kristi is pointing out that the DAM system is flexible. A good DAM system is flexible. And it can be used around the user's needs and the organization's needs. So excellent point that you raised there. Let's get into collections and folders. Speaking of which, Now, one thing to point out is what is a collection? Because some of you may not have experienced this fabulous topic yet, but what a collection ultimately allows you to do is to collect items, whether those are images or videos or other files that happen to be in the DAM. And what's wonderful about them is you can see they give you this nice visual output. You can see cute pictures of my son in his June model photo shoot, and also ways to share those. And that's the key difference between folders and other sharing mechanisms you might find with the DAM system. It's easy to create these things, as we can point out just using the SECLOCK system. I will not create a collection, do not worry. But
You can.
I won't clutter you up. But as you can see, if I were just to grab these 3 items, just as I'm doing, you'll notice that we have this bulk field here in this case, and there's all sorts of actions you can take within that space. That also includes the ability to add to collections. So if I were to do so, I can go and add these 3 items to a collection, and then back to my other point, you can immediately share that. You can either share that internally with other DAM users, and that way you don't have to worry about what folders they are, where their structured metadata is lying, all of that. You combine them in a collection, very easy to find. And you can restrict it to only certain users can be able to access this. But here's the cool part, folks. You can also share them externally. So if I said, okay, we need to take these pictures and provide a URL for an agency team outside of my DAM to be able to access this content, it is very easy to do so with this mechanism. And that's actually a huge difference between folders and collections. Is that collections provide that external output where folders only are meant for internal organizational purposes. So now that we have a baseline of what these things are, Kristi, how are you using them?
So I haven't used them a ton yet, but I did do this beautiful shoot for Brookline Locks, which is a lock shop that SECLOCK owns. And it was for their new website. So they're having somebody build this, and they needed all of the imagery. So I put them into the DAM, create a collection. These are not, this is an agency, so I don't want them to have DAM access. I don't want them to see anything else so that they could pull the wrong thing. So I put everything into a collection and then sent them the link.
And think about how easy that is.
It's so easy.
It's just click and place, and then they get access, full resolution imagery. It's easy to see within the system what it's going to be in this case. But I want to touch upon what you just said. They don't need user seats. Anybody can get access to a collection. So that is something that we find people asking, like, well, I'm only going to need to have probably 5 people in the system. Can I still use the DAM? Yes. Because if you ever suddenly need to expand that quickly to an agency, a branding team, the media, you can easily get them involved through collections. And this is a great way to suddenly burst as quickly as possible when you need to get access. So to show this with Kristi's system is that if you go to that media library, you should be able to find all of your collections directly from there. And there is that Brookline one that she went and developed. And as you can see here, once again, gorgeous shots. And
thank you.
I was impressed.
I worked very hard.
Yes. And from here, it's easy enough to publish that link. As you can see directly from here, it is a easy copyable link. Let's pop open a browser tab just to show what that thing looks like. And as we can see, I can easily download the collection, or as a user, I could technically go through and choose each individual image if for some reason all the pictures weren't applicable for whatever that needs to be. There's many different ways to scale this, organize this. So once again, metadata in the world of importance for a DAM system, it's the Mount Rushmore. It's one of the top 4. When we're talking about being able to share things out of the system, once again, it's on Mount Rushmore. So very important stuff. Now, I do want to touch upon, Kristi, something that you were mentioning. You talked about folders. We've talked about collections now.
Mm-hmm.
You're not saying folders are bad because you are still using them. Tell me about that.
I am. So I'm using them because the designers, designer and marketing director, they don't want people to have access to their stuff. So I have a folder for them that only they have access to. They don't want other people to go in and pull the wrong whatever they design, like spec sheet or whatever. They don't want it getting into the wrong hands, which it's a very small company. That's unlikely to happen, but just in case, like, we want to make sure that they feel like they have control over their own content.
And that's a huge part of a DAM system is user roles and permissions, because we want to ensure that certain people, they can't do everything. The only person who really should be able to do everything based on the company size that SECLOCK has is Kristi. Anybody else that needs access to the DAM, they should not have the ability to delete Kristi's stuff. They shouldn't have the ability to rename Kristi's stuff. So tying them to a specific folder, as she has gone and done in this scenario, was very smart, saying, for these various teams, they can only get into the design assets folder. It has everything that they need to use, such as content from the Brookline Lock campaign, as well as some how-to
We
videos.
have yet to get to uploading all of their content, but we did a bunch of videos, and those are kind of work in progress, so we don't want those to get out.
And always, if you take a look at any folder, you can always check the sharing structure of it, just taking a look at this custom action one here. You can always add specific users in here, and then also even certain rights to that. So if I said, well, we want to make sure that this guy, I'm not going to change anything, but if Dan here...
Dan will be so excited.
Let's say that Dan can only view certain aspects of the custom actions folder. That's all he would see. He wouldn't see any other folders, any other assets, and he would only be able to view and download those assets. He can't upload anything new to the folder, he can't delete, he can't rename, and also he can't necessarily do anything when it comes to other more finite things like add a subfolder or moderate if you are using some form of moderation. So when you're looking at a DAM system, granularity is actually a good thing. Mm-hmm. And I think Kristi is demonstrating that she's done this well. When you have a need from your design team, you've been able to accommodate that with the capabilities of the system.
Yep.
All right, so before we go to Q&A, get those questions bubbled up, folks. Let's have 3 things that Kristi is recommending, and I agree with all of these too, because it's not just Kristi's opinions, these are Kristi and Sam's opinions.
You can disagree if you want.
But 3 recommendations for those that are using the Cloudinary DAM, either as a brand new implementation or things to pivot with in a current implementation. And the first is hiring. Talk to me about this.
Yes, I think everyone needs a dedicated librarian. It's what we do. We do taxonomy. We know how to do all of this stuff. You also need someone to drive user adoption, someone to be a strong advocate for the system. You need to get people using it. And the best way to do that is to have one point person who is ultimately responsible for the system. One person who knows it inside and out better than anyone. And they can really get adoption up to where you need it to be. But it really relies on that one person.
And this is really, really important because as you can see here, this term, every system needs an owner, not a contractor. I see this happen a lot with DAM implementations, is that there's nobody that actually owns it within the company and they outsource it to say, okay, you know a lot about taxonomy and metadata and governance. We'll hire you, come in, build this thing out for Cloudinary, and then that contractor leaves.
Right.
And nobody knows how to use the system. And then what ends up happening? The system doesn't get used and you spend a lot of money on a system that doesn't get used. Mm-hmm. So it needs an owner. And yes, that doesn't mean a contractor can't help. It can't help accelerate, but ultimately the contractor needs to be able to pass off the baton to a dedicated owner that will be able to run once the project is originally launched.
It also makes it easier for the vendor to have one person that they go to instead of a whole group of people. You run everything through that one person and then they get opinions from wherever they need to get it from. So it's easier for everyone.
It is. It definitely is. Now, of course, not every company can focus their efforts. I think, frankly, we're in a lucky state to have somebody as capable as you, Kristi, that is able to say, okay, if I have a question about what's needing to be done at SECLOCK, I can go to you. You have all the answers. If that's not the case, you should try to figure out how to make a champion very clearly within the team as well. So that way, if there are questions about, okay, do we go? Do we not go? Do we do this? Do we not do this? There needs to be a dedicated person that can make that call. So almost like a veto right. All right, point 2, an implementation team. So as we said, there needs to be an owner, there needs to be a champion, there needs to be someone to carry it over and grab that baton. but there also still needs to be people associated with them.
Yep. So having a good implementation team made up of people, everyone that will use it. So like if you have marketing, get someone from marketing. If you have someone from IT, you should definitely have someone from IT. Get someone from IT. All the groups that will use it should have a representative in the group. They're all stakeholders and they should all be involved in the implementation. Not every piece of it, but certainly when you're workshopping how to do taxonomy, definitely have an implementation team who can carry over then to the governance team, because you should have a governance team going forward. If there's any metadata changes, they need to be run through this team so that they ensure that that change will work for the whole company.
And this is very key because with every system that I've seen, at Cloudinary, at companies I've worked for before Cloudinary, if you don't have a team that's ultimately buying into the concept of this new system coming in, this is how you get siloing. You're like, oh, well, that's something that the sales team does, or that's something that, that's kind of a content team thing. And so we use our own stuff.
Yeah.
If you want to get buy-in from everybody, if you want a system to be implemented across the board, you want to get stakeholders from each one of those areas.
Yeah.
And once again, it's not a short-term ask, it's a long-term ask because we're saying, great, you helped us launch this, help us maintain it. You have to raise the baby after you clothe it. So make sure that you have a team set up ready to do so. And I love what you're pointing out about like metadata shouldn't be changed unless it's agreed upon by the greater group.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's really important.
The last point, and you touched upon this, as members of the implementation team, IT needs to be involved in that. And you might be thinking to yourself, IT? Why would they be involved? Kristi, why do they need to be involved?
They need to help you force people to use the new tool. So if there are other tools that they can like outlaw, then tell them what those are and let them outlaw them. If you don't want people using Dropbox or Google Drive, have them tell them that they can't use that stuff anymore. At SECLOCK, it's not as big of a deal. It's a small team. At Bose, there were security concerns. We didn't want people using a certain thing. So I really had to lobby to get IT on my side and say, can you please tell these people to stop using all of this stuff? That'll force them into using the DAM. And then you should also just get them on your side in general so that they can just help. If they get questions from people about like, this isn't working in Dropbox, they should redirect those people to you. So you can say, actually, you should be using the DAM instead. That stuff's all in the DAM.
And I think one thing that's really big about this is find those potential non-adopters as early as possible and profile them. And I'm saying that judgmentally in a funny way, but it's more to point out that if you can smell that Susie from accounting is never going to get rid of her Dropbox account, diagnose that fast and say, hey, these are probably going to be our pain points for adoption. Right. And that way, your governance team, your implementation team, your champion, whoever it is, they're aware of the potential problem that can come when we say, well, we bought this tool, but nobody's using it. Did we probably know in the back of our mind that Susie from accounting was going to be an issue? Then talk about Susie ahead of the time before contracts are signed.
Yeah, if you can have someone on your team that specializes in change management as well or knows a lot about it, that is one of the first steps in change management is identify who's going to have a problem with the change and why, and then tackle it from all of the angles.
I promise you, if you can align with IT, this is just like a Sam Brace philosophy. It makes your life easier. It always does. So as soon as you're thinking about it, it's a great thing to do. So I think this covers most of it. Kristi, any final thoughts, comments, opinions that you want to share before I open this up?
No, let's get some questions.
Excellent. First of all, round of applause for Kristi. She did awesome.
And Sam.
Oh, no, we're good. Questions, anything for me or Kristi? Anything that you heard that you want us to dive deeper into? Anything that we didn't cover that you want us to cover? Anything? Yes, Misha.
Yeah, so the value of the Untitled Chapter, are you able to kind of bring forward aspects from the Untitled into Metadata automatically, if you start to
No, but that's definitely something that's possible. Custom Ink is doing some of that actually right now. So I don't know how much they showed because I was popping in and out of sessions, but one of the things that Custom Ink is doing is there is a lot of data that's embedded within their content, and they're extracting that through our Media Flows product. So we were able to do a series of API calls, so that way all the embedded metadata became structured metadata and tags. So that way it became this nice automated process. So there's lots of different ways to ultimately do it. That's a very technical way that the custom ink team has developed this. But it is to say that through upload presets, that indicator that I showed where you can do the manual tagging, that's also a way where you can start implementing certain AI tools that we provide, and then having those come into the tagging processes or the metadata processes as well. So you can make it very turnkey. And that's actually something that's important to note, is that as we're talking about with Kristi's team, once it gets to the point of scaling, you want to start implementing more automation as possible. And a lot of these good core practices, once they've been foundationalized, is that a word? I'm going to say it's a word, is that it's something where this can now be done more simply because you can define what the upload presets are and what they should be. So, Misha, great question. Did I answer it? Okay. All right. Other questions, comments, opinions? Yes?
For the like require metadata, something where you create a metadata object, field starts off as go out or whatever, and then you want to make it required. Does that influence the items you've already uploaded before?
It can. So one of the things that actually Kristi has in her system, which is pretty cool, but it's not necessarily something that all users have at this point, is something around conditionals and rules that are set up to certain situations. So you can always have it where it backflows through that, but it's not something that every DAM user has today. But is it anything else to add to that?
No, I mean, we are using conditional metadata, and it's really cool. I hope it one day flows over into the search. But yeah, so if we select photography for asset type, it narrows the selection for subtype. So is it a lifestyle? Is it a studio? Is it whatever? But that is really cool. So
and that way, then you can always go backwards as well. So if I said, like, in this case, oh shoot, I uploaded these 200,000 images and I forgot to add the vendor to it, then I could do that, and then it will influence the search in that case too.
Yeah, I think everyone should have at least some required pieces of metadata. You want people to put something in when they're uploading. Otherwise, you have nothing, and that's not good.
No, I definitely agree with that. And I think one thing to also remember with metadata is that because these are terms that are very specific to the organization, yours will be highly different than what we demonstrated here today with SECLOCK. I've seen it where I came before working at Cloudinary from the travel and tourism space, and they're big on usage rights, where we purchase photography of a certain destination. We want to make sure that we are crediting the photographer, or if we have to because of the agreements we signed. That's a great way to use metadata. So there's all sorts of different use cases for this. So just keep it in mind that you are unique people. You are beautiful snowflakes and butterflies. You should make sure that your metadata reflects your authenticity and uniqueness. Any other questions, comments, insults, criticism, opinions?
Kristi, what about other systems that you're integrating with, both downstream and upstream?
So we are integrating with, so we're kind of building our own PIM CMS. We have one already, but they're building a new version of it on Nova. Don't quote me on that. But that's where all the information is going to come from. And then how we're going to tie the images. I'll upload everything to Cloudinary, and then within the PIM or CMS, it's both. I'll upload a CSV that has the file name and the SKU, and it will find everything in Cloudinary and tie it to the. It's the only way that we can do it with this quantity. So I'll have one image and it'll represent 1,000 SKUs. So if that's just a CSV file, it's the quickest way to map everything together.
So is there a concept of master data management in your company now?
That's a good question. Yes, we have a data team. We have a great data team. And on the PIM side, they really have all of that locked down. So I know what is going to end up flowing into Cloudinary is going to be what it should be. That's why I don't want to manage. I don't think product information should be managed in the DAM. You really want to avoid that if you can. especially if you have a PIM, that's what PIM does. So I would prefer to not touch that. Especially we just did like a revamp of the categories, so they changed. So to have to do that in 2 places is like literal torture. So if it can just flow in, then that's best case scenario.
And a good point. So I know many of you were in the no-code session before this one, and you probably missed the conversation that was happening in the developer track that was focusing on PIM systems. But Vimal, who is essentially one of the main architects that's over at Syndigo, which used to be Riversand, they are a PIM system that Cloudinary has direct integrations with. And while what Kristi's talking about is something that's almost built in-house.
Right.
This is where if you are looking at investigating PIM systems, he's a great person to talk to while you have him here face-to-face. So make sure that if you're walking around, he's wearing his Syndigo shirt, he's wearing a hat, go talk to him. He's a fabulous person. Vimal. All right, I will let you guys go instead of barraging you with more requests for questions. Thank you. Come on back for the last session, which are going to be taught by these 2 guys in the back, Josh and Misha, about creative automation. Thank you, everybody.